So let's talk a little bit about you. How do you come across graph technology, ontologies, RDF in your career?
Everybody I feel in our space gets into this in a different way. I did not mean to get into this, that's for sure. I was working a lot in like SEO at a publishing company where, they needed content to show up in search results on Google and their own platform. And as part of that, I started to explore. I always thought, well, there's got to be a better way to get this content to show up. And the problem was most people don't call an automobile, because it was in STEM manufacturing that I was working in. They don't call it an automobile, it's a car or your vehicle, or like there's all these words that mean the same thing. And so I actually got into ontology and graph from a vocabulary mapping perspective, but then quickly that transformed into doing AI, where okay, well, now can we do auto classification? Can we walk a graph of all of these things and not just all the synonyms of that thing, but how those things interrelate? Because again, this was manufacturing. So if you have a car, it's got an engine, it's got tires, and those all work together in certain ways. And so I just got very fascinated about this. And then I've told him this before, but David Meza, he works at NASA. I went to a conference and he was there and he was talking about this thing called a knowledge graph. At this point, I had only thought of ontologies and there was graph like network things. I didn't know there's a thing called knowledge graph because it wasn't as popular back then. Maybe I'm aging myself when I say that, but I ran into David. He talked to me about all the things that he was working on, and that was really the spark that got me to go for my PhD and to study this full time as my career. So it's just because I have a passion for it. I think that's why I keep doing so much in this space. Is just I love it and I love helping people get more familiar with it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, David is a pioneer in the field. He enabled a lot in this industry. So, what is, according to you, the biggest misconception about graph technology?
I once had an engineer talk to me about graphs in this way, where I said, "Hey, if we want to do this project, a knowledge graph would be a good solution for what we're encountering here." And he told me, Ashley, building a knowledge graph is like building this beautiful balcony on the side of a shack on a beach. We're not there yet. Like that's a cool thing someday, but it's not part of the foundation. It's not part of what we can do right now. It's a pipe dream kind of thing. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't think you understand what this does. And I was right. Later on, there was a huge project at that same organization where they were creating a big enterprise knowledge graph to help connect different resources across different teams, doing data quality with, some of the ontology constraints and things like that, entity resolution. Like they started to see the value of it. But I think that's still pretty common where a lot of people just think a knowledge graph is a nice to have, not a necessary. Although with AI, that's obviously changing with symbolic AI, where people are seeing a huge decrease in hallucinations and an increase in accuracy and a decrease in risk when they introduce knowledge graph into the mix of their AI pipeline. So that has other issues though, where misconceptions there are you need a giant graph now to do this, because that's kind of what you needed from before. And actually, when you're doing symbolic AI, you don't need a huge graph. It just needs to help where the AI falls short and when you need higher accuracy and when you want to reduce risk, which is not on everything, right? So I made a video on my YouTube channel actually recently on that topic. I had people coming at me with pitchforks. I was so surprised. It's like, hey, if you have a big knowledge graph, there's lots of need for that. If you have one and you want to try to use it for AI, that's also great. But for those that are starting to get into graph and you're specifically doing it for symbolic AI, you don't always have to have a giant graph to do that.
I agree. Yeah, I've seen so many people actually knocking on the door saying we have those billions of data, we need to put them into a graph, but actually, no. You should put on the graph only what needs to be in the graph. So, what is the most exciting thing that happened this year in the graph? And don't say it's graph rag.
No, I won't say graph rag. Well, I would say I will, maybe popular, unpopular opinion. I don't ever have to write a SPARQL query again. That makes me super excited.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
there's lots of lovers of SPARQL. Like I'm not a SPARQL hater in any way, but what I'm saying is, especially when I'm trying to teach engineers how to interact with a graph, having to teach them SPARQL if you're dealing with RDF based stuff, um, it's tough. It's really tough. And so now with again AI being assistance here, you can have the AI write the query, or you can use it to at least get the draft query for yourself, because you still have to know that it's properly formed, it's not going to run for 12 days. Like there's stuff that you still need to like watch for. So maybe that's not to everyone else the most exciting groundbreaking thing, but I feel like there's a higher adoption of graph because people don't have as many barriers to entry. So I think that's why it's exciting.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I recently worked on a project, and basically what used to take a couple of days, writing queries, fine-tuning those queries, just takes now 30 minutes. So it's just, in terms of productivity, it's just awesome. What is the model that you would use
Yeah.
for writing queries? What is the best one?
That's It really depends on what models you're using predominantly on your project or your organization, because the more models that are out there, the worse off the model degradation is, and environmental impact and all those other things. So I actually try to use as many of the same models as I can to all the other ones I'm doing for other projects. So right now I'm looking at a lot of Anthropic things, but I would say a lot of them do a really good job. So pick your poison, pick the one you like the most or that you're already using a lot of, and it should do the trick. So I can't really say that there's one that's better than the other. And the other thing is, and this is just like a tidbit for anyone that is working in the AI space, don't over invest in model selection, because these models are going to change in 6 to 9 months anyways. So you're going to switch anyways. So it's okay.
Yeah, very wise word. All right, so how about the future? Where do you think this graph technology is heading to?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot more graph adoption in areas that we used to really fight to have a place in. I've had a lot of people. I mean, one of the benefits of having a YouTube channel that's totally free, open, I make no money on the darn thing, I just do it to help people, is people feel very safe reaching out to me and talking to me about, the things that they're struggling with. I have had so many people reaching out that are dealing with supply chain, specifically in like food and areas where the manufacturing of the food gets onto the trucks, kind of thing. And maybe that's because of the other things going on in the world, but this was happening even up to 2 years ago. There's so many think tanks now that are focused on how to use graph specifically for shipping and manufacturing, but also in like food sciences. And to see so many different people coming out of the woodwork to ask about this. Yes, graph rag, graph space rag is awesome. Having symbolic AI. I know a lot of people saying like 2026 is the year of ontology. I would fully agree with that. So instead of rehashing what probably a lot of other people are seeing and talking about, which I agree with, I would also say that for some of the industry that's really going to jump off is being more effective at getting food from where it's being produced, where it's being grown, whatever it is, and getting it to its final destination in a lot more effective ways, which is going to help a lot of people. So I'm really excited to see how graph is used in that space.
Now let's talk about the technology more than use case. So Graph is an enabler of Gen AI. Okay, Graph is an enabler for users who want to make sense of complex connections in the field of whatever use case. Great, but there are many problems that haven't been solved yet. What are they?
I think that there's patterns in graph that haven't really been fully tapped into, right? Certain domains just haven't done anything or not done a lot with. So, as an example, fraud detection. It's been, cybersecurity, banking has been using graph based network analysis to figure that out for a very long time. Look at the Panama Papers, right? And some of that stuff. The thing with this is you can use that same methodology to understand when there's false positives out there in social media. For instance, if somebody is interested in understanding across the board, what are those trends that are leading to, the next big thing in makeup or something? A lot of social media folks will go on and say, look, this thing is going viral. And then they actually are making it viral by saying that when actually it wasn't viral. So that's a false positive. So if you're somebody that's trying to understand how to plan the rest of your product development cycle, having false positives in your data is really bad, because you're taking action on things that aren't true. Same with research. I do a lot of things with research in my day job, and citation fraud is a really big deal right now. So scientists are out there doing really, really important work, and then there are other scientists that aren't doing nearly as much work and paying citation farms to literally create fake papers to cite their stuff, which is degrading all of the scientific research out there. You can use graph for citation fraud analysis. Like some of these things that we see in like banking or insurance or finance and those types of areas can actually be used in the same pattern in other areas and do a lot of good. So I really think that that's where the technology is going to go. Of course, it's going to keep going forward with AI and doing fact verification with knowledge graph, reduce risk with knowledge graph in the mix of AI. But transformer models, i.e. LLMs, they've had a slowdown of the giant leaps. And so until the new thing outside of transformers is invented, I heard some cool things about diffusion models recently. I think that there's going to be some gains there, but not nearly as many as we've seen thus far. I think it's going to continue, don't get me wrong, for sure. But I think the next big thing is going to be, how do you take some of these common patterns and really use them to identify things out there in the world that AI is making it easier to make fraudulent? Because now it's not data that's the new oil, it's trust is the new oil. And knowledge graph really helps you with that. If that wasn't a soundbite, I never heard one.
Okay, yeah. So let's say that I want to get into this graph technology thing. Where should I start? How do I start? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I always say if somebody's trying to start into graph, you have to start with a good use case. And I know that sounds so bland, but there are way too many people that I talk to. They're like, look, I built this amazing ontology and this amazing knowledge graph, and now it's great. What do I do with it? And I'm like, oh no. Well, a lot of your modeling decisions should be catering to what you're going to use this graph for. So if you built it, there's a lot of modeling decisions, right? Like you can model it in the way that you as a subject matter expert would imagine the world, but that's not always the best way that the actual systems are going to use this thing. So always start out with a good use case. And there's two other pieces of advice on that. So one, when we're dealing in the graph space, and I myself am one of them, we always show stakeholders the circles and the lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
We always show them the graph visual. And I love a good graph visual, don't get me wrong. But when talking to stakeholders, I have found that, at the end of the day, these are still tables underneath the hood. If you show anyone what it looks like as a table, they immediately like it better. Like, I don't understand. It's just not seeing the circles and the lines will actually do you some good. So there's that. But when you are trying to understand how these circles and lines document into the use case, have a real query that you want to run. Whether it's an AI being sent in with a query to gather entities for, like graph grounding of some sort within RAG, or, this is an analytics thing that you're sending a query across your graph to understand, shortest path, fraudulent, like red flags, whatever it might be. You got to do that testing, right? And do it fast. So many people start, even if they do have a good use case, and they feel like they have to have the giant graph to facilitate it. It's like, no. Just start very small. Some of my experiments that I run with graph, they're maybe like 10 to 20 nodes in a graph. That's it. You can start small and show the progress and show the promise without over investing. Also, don't start out with tool selection. I hear that all the time. Which tool should I start with? I'm like, what kind of graph are you working with? That's pretty important to find out before you start selecting tools.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that.